All right. Welcome to another RD Buzz podcast where we go over all things real estate, recreation, restaurants in the Raleigh and Durham area. Hope you all are having a great week so far. Make sure to drop in the comments where you are joining from. If you are joining, whether you're joining live and this is not live, by the way, it's pre-recorded, but whether you're joining at the time this is rolling out or at a later date, just drop in the comments where you're joining from. That way we know how many folks are local, how many folks are out of state, and it just helps us as we put together the content for this on a weekly basis. But we got some good topics tonight. One in particular that actually was just announced. I'm filming this on Tuesday morning, and something really big for the area was just announced. We're going to dig into that here in a second. But the first thing we're going to talk about is insurance cancellations. So one of the, obviously folks moving into North Carolina, one of the things on their mind if they're moving from places like Florida or California is what does the insurance situation look like in North Carolina? And an organization called Resi Club, which we use a lot of their data, a lot of their articles on these weekly lives or weekly podcasts. And they put out a really fascinating article this week on insurance cancellations by county throughout the entire country. And it was really shocking because you always think of Florida as being an area that experiences a lot of this, and they do. You think of places like California that experience a lot of this. But an area that I was not expecting to see pop up as much as it did was North Carolina, specifically Eastern North Carolina. And I'll pull up the article here in a second and show it to you. But basically, where this data came from is they compiled all the data produced by the Senate Budget Committee in December of 2024. And this is 2023 data. So it is lagging a bit. So this isn't including things that we saw like as a result of the hurricane that hit the North Carolina mountains. So, all of that all this data would have been well before any of those events would have occurred. But it's still really fascinating. So I'm going to share my screen so y'all can kind of follow along with me. But these were the top 10 counties that had insurance, the highest non-renewal rates in 2023, top 10 counties in the United States. Out of the top 10, 5 of those counties were Eastern North Carolina, which really, honestly, really surprised me. I was expecting California and Florida to dominate the top 10. And Florida did. Florida is on here 4 times. But North Carolina counties are on here 5 times. All Eastern North Carolina counties. So I'm going to use this map here because this map's pretty helpful. So this is obviously a map of every single county. The darker the blue, the higher the cancellation rates were, or the non-renewal rates. So you go out to California, you see them over there. You see them down here in southern Florida. And then you see Eastern North Carolina. It's pretty substantial. And then we'll look at obviously the triangle specific region as well. Wake County, Durham County, what they were experiencing. But you go out here to Dare County, and you're looking at almost a 13% rate of not being renewed in 2023, which is just really, really, really shocking to me. We don't live out there. I mean, this may not be shocking to some folks listening to it. I know very, very little about real estate on the eastern side of the coast. Cindy's family owns some property out there, but I don't ask them about their insurance policies or anything like that. And so, but it's really surprising to see these counties at such a high rate. If you look at Wake County, so Wake County, for those of you listening, if you don't know where Wake County is, that's places like Raleigh, Cary, Wake Forest, Apex, Holly Springs. We're at a 1.36% rate, so really low on the cancellation rate. Durham's at a 1.43. So our area in general, when you think of the triangle, the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Cary area, is not falling victim to what we're seeing on the eastern side of the coast. But if you are looking to move into North Carolina, this is something to consider. Like these are really big topics. These are really important topics, I should say, when you're considering an area to move. What does insurance cost? We deal with a lot of folks moving up from Florida. where home insurance rates are just, I mean, they're crazy, honestly. And not just what does it cost, but what is the likelihood that I get insurance and then I can't renew that insurance when the insurance company pulls out. And so this chart's really fascinating. Obviously, again, Western North Carolina, which experienced the horrific events with the hurricane last year, this data is from 2023, so it's far before any of those events would have occurred. But it would be interesting to know if the Senate Budget Committee did this again next year and they put together a map, what would Western North Carolina look like as well? But yeah, so I think that's really fascinating. So this right here is a different chart, which basically shows insurance costs over a 3-year change. So if you look at Wake County, insurance costs change from 2020 to 2023 increased by 21%. In Durham County, that was by 12%. So it's pretty significantly less. The median insurance premium paid in 2023 was $1,700 in Wake County, and it was $1,500 in Durham County. If you scroll out, you go down to Florida. Florida, I mean, some of these counties are, 3,000. Let's go down here, 5,000, 4,000. So substantially less than what we see. And again, these are the median. So there's going to be homes that are going to be far, far, far more expensive than this in those areas. But North Carolina in general, our area at least, has pretty reasonable insurance premiums, I think, compared to what you have in other parts of the country. So that is something from like an affordability standpoint. Our area does pretty well with that. But that's obviously, from 2020 to 2023, that's a pretty big jump. 21% is a pretty big jump. Durham County, 12%, not as high. Chatham County, 17%. Orange County, 15% increase. But if you live on, if you're looking to relocate into the area and you're considering, do we move to Charlotte? Do we move to the Raleigh area? Do we move to the Wilmington, the coastal region? I mean, insurance is a part of that. It's a part of that decision. It's not everything, but it's a part of that decision. So it's just good to know, what does the data say about insurance cancellation rates, insurance costs in those sides of the state. So anyway, I thought it was really fascinating. Honestly, really shocking. North Carolina being on the list 5 times. They had this chart here. The statewide home insurance non-renewal rate shift from 2019. So in Florida, only 1% of insurance policies were canceled in 2019. In 2023, 3% of Florida homes. I mean, that's a massive jump. North Carolina was a little bit more gradual. We went from 1.2% cancellation to 1.8%. But surprisingly, I mean, California's mentioned a lot with the home insurance, and maybe some of that is they've already pulled out a lot from those areas, so maybe it's not registering on here from like a percentage standpoint. But I wasn't expecting North Carolina to be 5 of the top 10 counties in the country for this. So, all right, so the story that I'm really excited about, I read on Axios this morning. It was basically just it was an announcement before Duke and UNC made the announcement, just kind of saying, hey, this is coming. And then as I was kind of prepping for the live, the details actually came out for this. But Duke and UNC are coming together to bring a $1 billion children's hospital to the area, which I think is just absolutely incredible. I think this is wonderful news. So those of you who aren't from the area, we really have 3 major medical systems in our area. We have Duke, we have UNC. Obviously, both of those are tied to universities, UNC being tied to UNC and Duke being tied to Duke. And then we have the Wake Med medical system, which is really on the Raleigh side. But UNC and Duke in this endeavor are partnering together to build not only the first freestanding children. I say freestanding because we do have children's hospitals here, but they're attached to other hospitals. So they're basically a wing of a larger hospital. But they're partnering to bring the only single standing children's hospital in the Raleigh area, but it's the only one in the state of North Carolina. So this will be the only freestanding children's hospital in all of North Carolina. What essentially led to this was the North Carolina General Assembly passed a $320 billion investment to go towards this. And it's going to be a pretty substantial hospital. I mean, the details that were put out by the Triangle Business Journal just a little bit ago are pretty substantial. It's going to be 100 acres. It's going to have a 500-bed hospital. So to kind of put that into comparison, I did a little bit of research. I'm assuming this is accurate because it was, it was Google Gemini was kicking out the results. I'm assuming we're just going to assume that what it was kicking out was accurate. But Duke University Hospital, for those of you who are familiar with the area, kind of a little bit about the size of these hospitals. Duke University Hospital is just a little bit over 1,000 beds. UNC's main hospital campus is just under 1,000 beds. Duke Regional, which is a smaller hospital in Durham, is I think it was 380 beds, if I remember correctly. So this is going to be a 500-bed hospital, which is pretty large. I mean, it's half the size of UNC's main hospital, half the size of Duke University's hospital, larger than Duke Regional. Construction is going to begin, it looks like, in 2027, expected to take about 6 years. It's going to have a surgical center. It's going to have a behavioral health center as a part of this. It's going to staff a daily staff of 3,000 people. So it's going to provide an enormous amount of jobs for our area. Anyway, I think this is phenomenal news. The fact that North Carolina, I actually didn't know that until this article came out. The North Carolina does not have a freestanding children's hospital. This is not just the first in Raleigh, but it's the first in the entire state of North Carolina, which is really surprising. With you look at the healthcare that we have here, which is some of the best in the country, and we don't have a children's hospital. But that's going to change. So where will this go? Obviously, 100 acres is a lot. Where's it going to go? No one really knows. Well, I'm sure somebody knows, but it's not published in any of these articles. I'm sure they're going to, and even this article mentions it a little bit. Key considerations for a potential site here. I'll share this with you. Right here. Key considerations for a potential site include highway access and proximity to the Raleigh-Durham International Airport. So, which makes sense, right? Like if you have a children's hospital in your region, you probably want it to be as central as possible. The closer you can get it to the airport, the more central that is, because you have great access for folks who are either flying into the area to use that medical facility, or you'll have great access to folks who live in Raleigh or Durham or Chapel Hill. No matter where they live, they'll have good access to the hospital. But yeah, I think this is great. I mean, just from the standpoint of better healthcare for kids in the region, more specialized healthcare for children, to the job creation that this provides, and it makes from a standpoint of children's healthcare, it's going to make the Raleigh area one of the go-to regions in the state, probably in the region of the Southeast. Yeah, so I think this is really exciting. I was really excited when I saw this. Speaking of Duke and UNC, this is somewhat related, but also totally unrelated. If you do move to the area, or if you already live in the area, a really big game's coming up on Saturday. Duke and UNC play this Saturday. And for those of you who move to the area, you really do have to pick a side, whether it's Duke, UNC, NC State, doesn't really matter. You just got to pick a side. Duke played NC State last night, and then Duke and UNC will play this weekend for the first time of the year, and then they'll play again in March. And sometimes they play more after that when it gets to the tournament season. But sometimes folks are like, why is it such a big rivalry? But then they get here, and people don't understand. I mean, from Cameron Indoor Stadium, which is Duke's basketball stadium, to the Dean Center at UNC, it's about 11 miles. Like, it's a really short distance between those two schools. And so it's just a huge rivalry. So if you are from out of state, you're looking at potentially moving into the area, you should just watch the game this weekend. It'll be a good game, and cheer for Duke. It'll be good. So I enjoy. I mean, I'm a Duke fan. Obviously, want Duke to win, but regardless, I always love the Duke and UNC games. They're a lot of fun. But back to the hospital side of things, this is big news. I think it's really, really, really good for the area, for a lot of families who move here too. I mean, obviously, not everything. Everybody always thinks of schools, right? Which is probably what you should think of when you're moving to an area, but healthcare goes into that too, like access to healthcare. And this kind of transforms this area when it comes to access for children's healthcare. So, all right, moving to an article about the Research Triangle Park. So I don't want to go into too much detail on this. It is a little bit about the hub coming in RTP. We've gone over that a ton in great detail on other podcasts, but the reason it's worth talking about today is there is a vote occurring on January 31st. And basically, they're voting to redo the covenants for the Research Triangle Park. We actually went into this in great depth on another live. I couldn't tell you when it was. It was months and months ago. It may have been a year ago. Who knows? But the idea is there's a lot of underutilized space within the Research Triangle Park. And the first step in getting that space to be better utilized is redoing the covenants for the Research Triangle Park. And then you go through the part of rezoning some of that land. And when I talk about underutilized space, I'm talking about things like parking lots that aren't used. If you've ever driven through the Research Triangle Park, you feel this. I mean, it's, sometimes folks will come here and they'll be like, should we go visit the Research Triangle Park? And I'm always like, absolutely not. It is, there's nothing to see. And there is an effort to change some of that over the next decade, 2 decades, however long it takes. Where basically, what we have happening now is the hub is being developed. It's a really large multi-use development going on in the Research Triangle Park. But the idea is you will have kind of mini developments kind of spread out throughout the Research Triangle Park. But the first step in that is fixing the covenants to allow that. And then the next step is working with government officials to rezone the use of some of those open spots. So that's going to take place apparently on the 31st, according to the Triangle Business Journal. And that's really going to determine the future of some of those spots that are underutilized. And there's a lot of underutilized spots there. When we did an in-depth dive on this, there was actually a lot of detail on how many acres, I can't remember off the top of my head, but how many acres the Research Triangle Park is and how many acres are underutilized. And it's truly astounding. So if this vote goes through, and based on the article I was reading, it sounds like it will go through and the covenants will be changed, and then starts the process of reworking some of the zoning of those areas. It's going to transform that area, and it in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, however long it takes, the Research Triangle Park will become an area that's probably worth visiting if you're coming into the area, you're exploring the area. It's going to be it's going to probably feel more like a city than it is just kind of this large spread out corporate space. So anyway, that vote's happening on the 31st. Maybe by the time we do the live next week, we'll have an update on how that vote went. So here's an interesting article also put out by the Triangle Business Journal. So Toll Brothers, which is obviously a national builder, more on the luxury side of builders, has purchased 76 acres in Chatham County. And the plan is to put 30 single family homes, which actually is, I mean, that's not a lot for 76 acres. But the starting price, the neighborhood is going to be called Chapel Oaks, and starting price is going to be $1 million. The homes are going to average between 4,000 square feet and 5,200 square feet. So it's going to be pretty substantial. It's going to be more of a luxury neighborhood. But we talk about this a lot. Chatham County is changing, and it's changing quickly, maybe too quickly, but it's Chatham County is changing really fast. And you've got a lot of, neighborhoods like this going in that are going to be more on the luxury side. You have large developments like Chatham Park. And so, yeah, it's going to look a lot different in the next decade, 2 decades there. But Toll Brothers is a good builder. And so, I think it's good. 30 homes on 76 acres it's going to be a pretty beautiful community, most likely. So, all right, keeping it with real estate, and we'll probably end with this topic because my computer battery is dying on me. Sometimes I forget to charge my computer battery before I hop on to these, which is always a mistake. But Resi Club, who put out the article on the home insurance policies not being renewed, also put out an article on Zillow and Moody's forecasts for the 2025 housing market. And I thought it was worth going over because those are both really large organizations. I'm going to share my screen so you can kind of follow along with it. And they're quite different, to be honest with you. What Zillow says is going to happen in the market and what Moody's says is going to happen in the market are quite different. So my stomach's growling, so I apologize if y'all can hear that. So Zillow is basically saying that inventory is going to increase some, but not enough that prices fall. Right. So you're still going to have buyer demand, and you're going to have a little bit better inventory, and it's going to make price growth a little slower, but it's still going to grow overall. And so we'll look at them first. Moody's is saying the opposite. Moody's going to say that inventory is going to increase so much this year that buyer demand is not going to keep up. And with buyer demand not keeping up, we're going to start to see prices fall. So those are two very, very, very different approaches to this. But we'll start with Zillow here. I'm going to scroll in here. I want y'all to be able, there we go. All right. So we got all these little dots here. We're going to get to, and this is Zillow's, by the way. So this is Zillow's forecast for the area. So Raleigh, they are projecting a 3.1 increase in prices year over year for 2025. That's their projection. Durham, they're increasing 3.7. So they're expecting the Durham area to increase at a higher rate than the Raleigh area. What I'm assuming with this too, because Durham Chapel Hill is its own metro, Raleigh Cary is its own metro, that this number here includes the Raleigh Cary metro, and this number here is the Durham Chapel Hill metro. So that's my assumption. Charlotte, they're expecting to increase 4.4%, which is pretty incredible. In general, though, that's my hometown. I grew up in Albemarle. 6% growth in Albemarle. If my mom and dad are watching, and they probably are, 6% growth in Albemarle. That's pretty impressive. I would not have expected that. All right, so back to Raleigh. Yeah, so 3.1% growth, Durham 3.7% growth. Now this, and right here, expects average 2.9% growth, national average. So we're exceeding the national average in both areas. What I will say about this is we did a video on home appreciation that took place in the Triangle. And I pulled out new construction and just focused primarily on resale because the numbers are drastically different if you include new construction versus if you're just looking at the resale side of things. And I have no idea if that's a statistical no when looking at home prices. But the reason I do that is when you're looking at when you're thinking about a housing market and how competitive the housing market is, or how quickly home prices are increasing, in general, most people are thinking of the resale market. When we talk about how hot a market is, it tends to be, we're talking about the resale market, not necessarily the new construction market. New construction market in general is kind of what I call almost like a fallback market, where if you're just tired of dealing with the resale side, if you're losing bids on homes, you can typically kind of fall back on new construction, where it's far less competitive and where incentives exist, no matter how hot the market is, at least recently. And so I kind of separate the two. So when you look at this price increase, they're most likely factoring also in the new construction side, which kind of pulls that down. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out as the year goes, and what those areas look like, because our area still struggles with inventory. I mean, we did a whole series on this 2 weeks ago on the live, especially places like Cary and Apex and Holly Springs. You look at inventory levels there pre-COVID and inventory levels now, and it's just they're not even in the same universe. And until those inventory levels get to those points where we were pre-pandemic levels, we're going to continue to see pretty significant price appreciation in those areas, because you just can't avoid it. If you don't have the inventory and you got this wave of buyer demand, then it creates competition and prices go up as a result of that. So, but this is the Zillow forecast. Now we get to Moody's. Moody's is not quite as positive. So we're going to zoom in here so I can, well, hold on. There we go. Try to make it as easy as possible for y'all to see. All right. So Moody's is saying, so remember, Zillow said 3.1% for Raleigh, 3.7% for Durham. Moody's is saying prices are going to fall 0.6% in Raleigh, and prices are going to fall 0.8% in Durham. So literally not just the polar opposite, but also a different take on the different regions. So where Zillow said we're going to see price growth, and we're going to see more price growth in Durham than we are in Raleigh, Moody's is saying we're going to see prices fall, and we're actually going to see prices fall more in Durham than in Raleigh. So literally it could not be more opposite. I'm just not, and they don't have Albemarle on here, which is pretty sad because Zillow had it. Charlotte, they're going to see a 1.2% price decrease. So again, Zillow had Charlotte increasing more in price than our region, and this, they have it falling more than our region. So really fascinating. All of this is dependent on inventory, right? At the end of the day, it's dependent on inventory. And what Moody's is saying, inventory is going to grow enough that you're going to see buyer demand not be able to keep up with the rising inventory. And as a result of that, you are going to see prices fall. If I had to pick one right now, January 28th, when I'm filming this, Tuesday, January 28th, I would probably side with Zillow's if I had to pick one. I think I just don't see the inventory increasing enough to satisfy the buyer demand. I just don't see it. So I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll know if I'm, I give it like 3 to 6 months, and I'll probably be able to tell you if I was wrong or right. But I just don't see it right now. What we do see, at least kind of what, and again, January 28th, it's very early in the year. But what we are seeing right now is substantial like buyer demand, like the reach outs, the appointments that we're setting. And if we're doing it, then I know other folks are as well, have honestly been at some of the highest levels we've ever seen. for us personally. And so I know that there's a lot of buyer demand in the market that's entering right now. Maybe that fizzles out next month, right? Maybe it fizzles out in March or whatever that looks like. It's too early. It's too early to know. But I just don't see Moody's being the right one here. I think if I had to side with one, it would be Zillow. So I don't know if we'll see the same price appreciation that we saw last year, but I don't know if we're going to see prices fall in our area this year. So anyway, that's my take. Time will tell at the end of the day. So we'll know more as we progress through the year. But anyway, I appreciate y'all tuning in tonight. And again, if you are joining, make sure to put in the comments where you're joining from. You can put in the chat if you're joining live, or you can put in the comments if you're joining at a later date. But I do appreciate y'all watching, and we will see y'all next week. All right. Bye, y'all.